Hey guys, Dave with the First Place Auto Parts. Thanks for joining me in the shop today. You know, they say in life, everybody has 15 minutes of fame. My 15 minutes of fame came when I was a guest builder on the TV show Overhaulin with Chip Foose. This was in season 3, and it was episode 14 where they chose America's biggest beater. Stay tuned and I'll answer the question, do the cars really get built in 7 days? And what's it like to work on TV building a car? Let's start off with the fact that I'm just like you guys. I'm a car guy that works on my own stuff in the garage. Where my experience may differ a little bit from yours is that I've been in the automotive aftermarket working in this industry for over 15 years. I've worked in both the retail side of things and also for manufacturers and everything in between. I've been on Power Tour, I've been to SEMA a bunch of times, been to the SEMA banquet, things of that nature. I've got to see a lot of neat stuff. I've also paid my dues and worked a lot of hours. When I had the opportunity to do this build, I was working for a company that was actually providing a lot of the parts for the build. So when they asked, I raised my hand and said, heck yeah. So the first thing you do when you show up to the Overhaulin set, which is in Southern California, it's filmed in this very nondescript white building which dots Southern California's landscape. If you've ever been there, all these buildings look the same. They're made of metal. You have no idea what's going on inside. The reality is there's a lot of cool car buildings, motorcycles, boats, things of that nature inside those buildings you could never imagine. But the set itself was pretty cool, well lit, lots of microphones, lots of cameras. But what really struck me was the tools. There were toolboxes and tools lining every wall that you could see. What was funny was by the end of the build, you couldn't find a 9/16 wrench or a 1/2 inch wrench for to save your life. So all those tools were scattered about by the end of the show, but it's a really neat, clean set. So the car that Chip chose, if you're familiar with overhauling, there's usually a mark where someone's chosen, they take their car, they build it. There's usually a friend or a sibling or a wife that's involved that knows what the person wants the car built to. Chip draws it, they build it, and they deliver it in 7 days. This time the episode was a little different. What they did is they went across the country and looked at 4 cars for what they deemed was America's biggest beater. What they chose was a car out of Texas. It was a 71 Camaro. It was white, a small block. Not bad. It was kind of a cool car. It had hooker side pipe headers on it. The guy that owned it was super nice. So they chose that car as America's biggest beater. They ship it to California, and on the set, the first day, I think it was 9 o'clock in the morning, California time, the car shows up on a flatbed and all the builders are there awaiting its arrival. They back it off, they put it in the shop. I kid you not, we had that car blown apart in less than 2 hours. The engine was still hot when it was on the engine stand. So a lot of hands, we took that car apart. I'm not sure we bagged and tagged everything, which we would later find out was a bit of an issue, but it was amazing how many people, how organized it was, and the pile of parts that we had at the end of the day, not only taken off the car, but the pile of parts that we had to put on the car later. So what happens is the car itself gets shipped off to another location where the body work is done, if there's any needed. In this case, there was. The rest of us stayed back at the set and we take apart and rebuild all the sub-assemblies, including suspension, fuel, drivetrain. I ended up working on the drivetrain with another coworker. At this time, the 572, which is a tall deck, big block Chevrolet engine, has really just been released. No one really knew a lot about it. The accessories that they sent were meant for a small or a short deck, more traditional big block. So we really got the responsibility of getting this big block, the drivetrain together, the rear end and all those things. So the 572 showed up, nothing fit as it was supposed to. We had to re-drill bolts in the heads for mounting brackets and things of that nature, but it was a big motor and it was really cool to be working with all new parts. When you're working on a TV set, it's so well organized, there's nothing left to chance. If there was one part needed, there was 2 ordered. And that's not to say that there weren't some muscle car emergencies where we had to contact vendors to make sure that we had parts the next day for the build, because there were. But for the most part, it was well stocked with parts. Really, it was the best case scenario. If you ever worked on your own car and had to make 6 trips to the Advanced or AutoZone for washers, gaskets, whatever, you would have really appreciated this setup. So as the build progresses, we're starting to get more and more stuff assembled. Chip doesn't like cowl hoods. He doesn't like hood scoops. He likes clean lines. And the one thing, if you remember, that 572 was a tall deck motor. The one thing that we found when we test fit this motor into the car was that the hood wouldn't close. The carburetor itself would hit on the top of the cowl hood. So we had to use a cowl hood on this car, but we had to modify it somehow. So we are out the one day on the Sunday of the build where we had a little bit of time to not be at the studio. One of the people there, Al Valor, who was with American Wheels at the time, was gracious enough to take me and my coworker out to the beach in California for a little bit. We get a call at 5 o'clock from the show that says get down to Chip's shop because what we had to do is we had to machine a 1/4 inch out of the top of the intake manifold where the carburetor set, the carburetor pad itself. We had to machine a 1/4 inch out of that thing to try to get every bit of space we could. Come to find out it still wasn't enough, so we go back to Chip's shop where he has the hood and we walk in and he's massaging this hood with wood and his feet to get the cowl, the top of the cowl to sit a little bit higher so when the hood closed it would clear everything, including an air cleaner. So it was pretty cool to watch Chip do his thing. The guy is a tireless worker and he's completely hands-on in that show. You can really tell he has a lot of passion, not just for cars, but also for people. So everything you see on TV that you would think, man, that guy's pretty cool, it's true. Okay, as car guys and girls, we get to understand that nothing ever bolts on as it's originally planned to. And when you're building a car with all new parts, all high performance parts, nothing ever goes as planned, even when you're doing the paint. The car was at the paint booth where they paint all the Overhaulin cars, and the heat lamps wouldn't work. Now, heat lamps are critical to curing paint in a faster time, and when you're building a car in 7 days, it's vital that they work. So we get a call, I think it was around 11 o'clock at night, one of those nights, that we had to take the car, push it down a street, down to Chip's shop, where he had a paint booth and the heat lamps that would work. So we're pushing this body of this car down the street and almost darn near the middle of the night in Southern California. There's no suspension. You're kicking the front wheels to try to get it to turn. No brakes. We're dragging behind the thing, trying to get it to slow down. And we finally get it to Chip's shop. It was kind of comical to watch. I wish I had some pictures of it, but it was so impromptu and so fast that it was just one of those things you had to be willing to react immediately when you're on the set. We didn't get a lot of sleep. We worked a lot of nights until 2 or 3 in the morning, but it was so much fun. You just can't make this stuff up. So earlier I said that Chip is a real car guy and really cool. One of the things that I remember most was his willingness to chip in and do anything and everything that we were doing with the car. It was one night, it was the night that we took the body down to the paint booth, that he stayed behind and they had gotten a second gen Camaro, and he started laying out the stripes on this thing, starting around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. And he is laying these paint stripes out with green masking tape and things of that nature. That guy stayed until roughly 5 o'clock in the morning working on that car and those stripes, which were very elaborate when you see the finished product, so that he could do his template, and he uses a pounce bag and a striper so he can transfer it to the other side. But he spent 6 hours overnight working on this car to make sure that the pattern itself would be ready to take to the paint booth the next day to paint the car. Okay, right around day 5, the drivetrain's all ready to go in the car. We've got all the sub-assemblies done. The car comes back from paint. It looks amazing. It really is. Very intricate paint job. We've got roughly a day and a half to put this car back together. And I mean completely blown apart, right? Just a shell. All the custom interior. We've got to hang all the drivetrain parts, all the suspension, the brakes, the fuel system, the dash. Everything had to go in, including the glass. So we've got a day and a half to do it. It was a mad thrash. There were parts going everywhere. They did have a gentleman who basically headed up the build, who was kind of the general of the whole thing. So he kind of got people on various projects. But if you ever have put a car together, you know that working around another person, one other person, can be a chore or a challenge. Working around 10 or 15 other people is kind of like watching this orchestrated chaos take place. But slowly the car started to come together. So the whole time on your set, you're mic'd up, which means you're wearing a microphone. And essentially they take 6-7 days of build and they edit it into an hour show. So on the last day, we're putting this car together and I'm pouring gas into the fuel tank. Someone's holding a funnel and they stick a camera in my face and they say, "David, what are you doing?" And that's where I hadn't had sleep for 6 days. You know, you're really not eating all that well. You're tired, and I say something stupid like, you know, we're putting gas in the car, it's gonna go boom boom, and we're gonna stand back and we're all gonna smile. I'm telling you, after 6 days of no sleep, an instantaneous question was enough to knock you off your feet. I wish I had said something more prolific, you know, but I didn't, and it was just kind of funny when I look back on it, how tired I was, but also just how cool the experience was. So at the end of the show is the reveal. And what's kind of strange at that point is that you've been working for essentially 7 days and nights, non-stop, elbows flying, and then all of a sudden everything stops. You get ready for the final reveal, the final shot, everyone's kind of staged where they need to be, and you're standing back looking at a finished car, and you realize, you know what, I had a hand in that, which is pretty cool. So at the reveal, the paint, the painter, all the stripes that Chip had laid out, there was a pinstriper there that had to hand pinstripe each one of those edges. He got done literally minutes before we did the reveal, and we had to tell the owner when he came out, look, don't touch the paint, it's still wet, and it was. The owner of the car got a really neat vehicle, got a ton of really cool parts, and you know, it was an experience that I was grateful to be part of. I did get the opportunity to, at the end of the show, to be mic'd up and to be filmed, basically telling the owner about his new motor that when we first talked and we took the car apart, he's like, "Gee, David, I'd really love to have a big block in this thing someday." And little did he know, he was going to get the biggest big block, of 572 cubic inches. So he got exactly what he wanted, a ton of horsepower. I'm sure he was going to enjoy the heck out of it in his Texas residence. But that was just a neat part, you know, being able to tell him and shake his hand at the end, tell him what he had, and make sure they tell him to go straight. At the end of the show, it's kind of anticlimactic. Essentially, everybody goes their own way, you go home, and everything's done. If you remember what I said about the hood hitting the top of the carburetor or the air cleaner on the 572, and Chip had to massage the hood scoop, one of the air cleaner lids that we used got damaged, it got scratched, and it wasn't usable on the finished product. So there's these parts there's a pile of parts that were gonna get pitched into the dumpster, and I went and grabbed the air cleaner lid, and I said, "Hey Chip, you know, would you mind signing this thing just as a little memento that I could take back with me and hang in my shop?" And he's like, "Yeah, David, do you mind if I embellish it a little bit?" And I'm like, "Chip, embellish away." And what he did is, it's pretty cool. This air cleaner lid, I don't know if you can see it, I'll take a picture of it, but it's got 572, it has the episode, and then the paint stripe, or the striper guy that was doing all the pinstripes said, "Hey man, let me see that." And then he ends up pinstriping the lid as well. So I got this kind of cool memento from the show that hangs in my shop that always reminds me of the time that I had out there in California working on the Overhaulin show. It was a great experience. If you ever get a chance to do something like that, do it. The shows, for the most part, are real, man. Understand that they're edited for effect and for, you know, for an entertainment value, but the Overhaulin show was the real deal, and being part of it was just a really cool experience. Hey guys, I really appreciate you watching this video. If you enjoyed what you saw today, consider subscribing to the First Place Auto Parts YouTube channel, where we will continually be adding new product review videos, how to install those product videos that might be beneficial when it comes time to either buying or putting those parts on your car. We're also going to go do some cool car guy stuff that I think you're going to enjoy and not going to want to miss. Until next time, keep the hammer down and keep it between the guardrails.